to Bloody Besties, a true crime podcast hosted by two best friends who have known each other since elementary school. Our goal is to provide you with cases that you may not know about, with me, Ruby, a forensic scientist, presenting a case.
Me, true crime obsessed Melissa, who'll be throwing out some fun facts about the subject. So tune in, relax. Just kidding. Be on the edge of your seat, buckle up, and enjoy the ride.
Glad everybody's tuning in to our very first episode of Bloody Besties. Please be kind with us. This is a learning curve. We're trying a new recording location, new software, running two mics through the same computer. It's definitely going to be a learning experience for us. And just bear with us because we promise it'll be worth it. Just to get a scope of the way that we do this show, we'll probably preempt a few episodes with this. But it's going to start with Melissa giving me some fun facts. But how she got those fun facts is I came up with the case and I gave her a single topic and she had to try and stump me with a fun fact. Hopefully it's something I didn't come across during my research. So, Mel, what was the first topic I gave you?
Circus.
All right, so let's go.
You ready? Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know about the superstition regarding a certain color with the circus?
No, I know that circuses are mostly red. I mean, I don't go to circuses just because the animal part bothered me, but I know that a lot of them don't do that anymore. But
It's been phased out.
I know that the big top tent a lot of the time was like red and white. Does that have to do with something?
No, superstition, like something you don't want.
Maybe black, just because some people see that black is a bad thing.
I don't know.
Oh, then no, I have no clue. What is it?
Okay. Circuses, like the rest of the theatrical world, are known for their superstitious natures. One of the stranger faux pas of the circus world is wearing anything colored green in the ring.
What?
Yep, green. So Irish.
What? Okay, rude. But
Let's see. So a guy named Jim Rigona, he's the performance director of Ringling Brothers and Barnum Bailey Circus.
Oh my gosh, we're talking about them today.
Oh, yes.
So, okay, bring that fun fact.
So he said the superstition intrigued him enough to do some research into the matter. He traced it to the death of Lillian Lightzel. Lightzel, who was best known for the one-armed flanges.
Wait, what? One-armed
flanges. I will go.
Okay. I don't know what a flanges is.
Flanges. She would dangle from a rope by one hand and propel her body upwards like a human propeller. So on Friday the 13th...
We just had one of those.
We just had one. In 1931, while performing in Europe, Litzel, her rigging failed, sending her plummeting to the ground. Her fellow performers noticed that she had been wearing green, a color that immediately became verboten. 2 days later, at age 39, Leanne died from her injuries.
Oh, goodness.
So we also have superstitions in our rodeo world. I don't know if we used to tell them I used to do rodeos back in the day.
Heck yeah, you did. I came in, I watched, my baby nephew Echo. I call him a baby. He's 20, but still.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was watching him, not you.
That's fine. He was gorgeous. Whenever we'd compete, we wouldn't wear yellow. That was our bad color.
Really? I never knew that.
Yep, it's considered bad luck. In the earlier days of rodeo, the rodeo clowns wore yellow to distract the bulls. So as a result, the yellow became associated with danger and bad fortune.
I can't believe that I had no clue that yellow is a verboten color.
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting. Okay.
Lots of superstitions with the performers, which, rodeos are performers and circus people are performing as well.
Well, we will be on social media. I want to say it's going to be Instagram, Facebook. And if our marketing person decides to do it, I've never used X, but maybe she knows how to do it. I have no clue. I'll let you know if we're on there. But anywho, hopefully that was enough to whet your whistle because we're going to go ahead and get started into circus calamities. On July 6th, 1944, Ringling Brothers and Barnum Bailey Circus, told you I was bringing them up, they had come to town in Hartford, Connecticut, and the crowds on this hot summer afternoon in the field of Barber Street, it was good news for the performers of the Big Tent. They had 6,000 to 8,000 people.
Okay? That's a lot of people.
And what you're going to notice is I'm going to have to give all of these bracketed terms. because depending on the articles that I read, newspapers, they're all reported differently. I don't post my resources because it would take probably 12 pages for me to do that because I go real far in depth, sometimes books, sometimes 12th page of Google. But you'll get really used to it. And if you really want to know where I got that information, just inbox me. I'll give you my source. But that's why the range is so bracketed. It's going to be 6,000 to 8,000 people were inside watching the matinee performance. Again, this is July 6th, 1944. Things were going great. The circus was a regular feature in town, and every July it arrived late that day. So normally they're on time, but something happened. They arrived late, and they actually paid the local teens with a free ticket to return to the circus if they would help them erect this massive tent that they needed. And that was so that way they could get their performances started the next day. So they wanted everything to run on time after that. So they only missed one matinee performance on the day that they arrived. They were able to do that evening performance because the teenagers were willing to pitch in just to get that free ticket. So again, this is 1944. So that's a big deal, especially for teenagers that are just looking for some fun. So they missed the matinee on July 5th. Now, Ringling Brothers and Barnum Bailey Circus is billed as, quote unquote,
the greatest show on earth.
Yes, that movie is named after it. I have not seen that movie. Have you?
I actually love that movie. I'm not a theater girl.
No, you're not. You don't like musicals or anything.
No, but The Ringman with Hugh Jackman.
Yeah.
It's good, but it's sad.
See, I don't like watching sad movies. Why would I purposefully want to make myself depressed?
And I'm an ugly crier. So.
I've ever seen you cry.
That's good.
But yeah, I don't know what it is. Like I said, I've been to the circus once in my life. It did not bring me joy.
No, it's not good.
And so I had no intention of watching the movie. Now, if somebody can change my mind about the circus, please do. I'm open.
Well, nowadays they don't have the animals and the abuse because of all these activists.
Right.
So I would be curious to see it. But you don't even go to zoos because of caged animals.
Correct. And I also am terrified of clowns.
Yeah.
So the circus doesn't bring a whole lot of joy.
I would have so much fun with you in a circus. I would be torturing you.
Yeah, I'd prefer not. Thank you, though. Even though it was billed as the greatest show on earth, it had been running for some time. So since 1999, and that's when P.T. Barnum and James Anthony Bailey, they merged their circuses into one with the Ringling Brothers. So it was basically three circuses that came into one, and that was because there were some deaths and money problems and all this other stuff, because you have to remember this is through the Great Depression. They all became one, and that's why it has such a long name of P.T. Barnum and Bailey, Ringling Brothers. It's all of them.
That's a lot.
Now, the show, we're back to that day. So July 6th, the show started just a little bit behind schedule. So at 2:23, but it only took minutes for things to go wrong. The Animal Act had just finished, and the Flying Wallendas were ready to take the stage. And they have a history all their own, and though it has nothing to do with the story today, I'm going to tell you about the depressing events of their performance history because I get to. So, sorry, you get to be depressed.
Yay.
So, this family was circus folk since the 18th century, and they were a family of tightrope walkers. And they performed without a net, and that was because there was an incident that happened in 1928, and that was when their net was actually lost during transfer from one performance to the next. So they decided the show must go on, and they performed without the net.
No way.
And the audience went crazy because of this. They were like, if we're going to get that kind of a reception, we're just going to keep performing without a net.
God.
Yeah, exactly. And so because of this, it actually brings about a few of these tragic events that happen. And one of them, they were performing at the Shrine Circus in Detroit, and that was January 30th, 1962. And they were performing this pyramid stunt, and it took 7 people, and it involves multiple rows. So I think it was 5 rows high. So 7 people, 3 tiers. The top person is in a chair. And they've got those giant poles that they use if you've ever seen a tightrope walker.
Yeah.
Now, Obviously, I wouldn't be talking about it if things didn't go wrong. And actually, there was Carl Wallenda who came up with this act. He was the patriarch of the whole thing. And he was like, I've got this act. We're going to do it. Now, on that day, they were performing the stunt and tragedy happened because the pyramid collapsed. Now, Carl's son in law, Richard Fagen, I believe that's how you say his name, or Fagen, he was 29. His nephew, so this is Carl's nephew, Dieter Shep, who was 23, they fell to their death. And Jana Shep, who was 17, was the one sitting in the chair at the top. She was actually caught and held by three of the other people that were on the tightrope. So as she's falling, they fall, catch the rope. They catch her on her way down.
Wow.
They hold on to her while the people in the circus make a makeshift net. Because remember, that's why people are dying, is because there's no net. They finally drop her when the net's in place, but she bounces off the net. She hits her head and she winds up like getting, I don't want to say it's brain trauma, but she got seriously injured because she struck her head. And Mario Wallenda, who was 21, he was paralyzed from the waist down because of that fall. So shockingly, they actually went on to perform the following night.
What?
Because the show must go on. Isn't that insane? And that was just one. We're going to keep going with the Wallenda group.
With all 7 of the people?
Well, except for the dead ones and the paralyzed one and the one with the brain trauma.
So, like, 3 people.
I don't think that they performed that trick the next night, but the Flying Wallendas were still there.
They did something.
And what I've also learned is that when it comes to circus folk, I don't know if I get into it. I might on another episode, but basically there was a crap ton of circuses that were traversing, throughout these times. And so some of them, like if people were ill or there was like some major like flu going through, they would jump in and fill in the gaps. So we've had that happen, quite a few times in any performer's life where they were like, oh, this person dropped out. Can you sub in?
Right.
So it's like that.
The backups.
So I have a feeling that's kind of what they did is they just called in some of these other circus folk and said, we need some more tightrope walkers. And they jumped in. I think. I can't be 100% sure, but I'm 99% sure. Now, we're not done with them yet because the following year, Henrietta Kreis Grotefont, who was known as Miss Rita, was 43, married to Carl's half-brother, Art. She was performing on the top of a 50-foot pole in Omaha, Nebraska at the Tangier Shrine Circus. And she would stand on top of the pole, and it was like one of those really swaying poles. You know which ones I'm talking? I feel like we've all seen them, and they like Cirque du Soleil, where the pole just kind of bends and bows. Like if you've ever seen a tree in the wind, that's what she was standing on top of. And unfortunately, as it was swaying, she fell backwards, hit a wire on her way down, which caused her to flip, and that caused her to land face down on the floor.
Ouch.
So the rescue squad went to render aid. She was taken out of the tent, and the announcers told the audience, oh, she's not dead. Everything's fine.
She is fine.
So the show went on. And in reality, she had broken her neck and she was DOA at the hospital. So we're not done yet. In 1978, Carl himself fell to his death during a stunt, and it was possibly from a heart attack at the age of 73. So he was in the middle of performing and fell and was dead.
At 73?
Yep.
And 73 was old back then. It's not like 73 now.
No, but he was still performing.
God.
But then again, I got a dad who came out of retirement and is still working in his 70s. So
legend.
But yeah, and we're still not done yet. So I don't know if you remember this, and I didn't write it down, but I remember reading it, and I apologize. It happens. There was a tightrope that happened between two very tall buildings in Chicago, and they televised it and everything. Do you remember that? It was probably 80s, 90s.
No.
Because I remember watching this. That was a Wallenda that did that. Nothing bad happened to him. But I'm just letting you know that they continued to go and do some spectacular things. I'm only talking about the bad things, but they are amazing and do amazing things. Maybe in the socials, I'll find a picture of the tightrope walker and refresh my recollection. But I know it existed. But in 2017, they had another pyramid accident where they fell and 5 performers were seriously injured. And I hope I get this name right. Lihana, when she fell, She broke almost every bone in her face, but she didn't die. No one died in that accident. But she did break almost every bone in her face. Could you? Mm-hmm. Let's not. Yeah.
Break your nose, that's enough.
Exactly. I've never broken my nose. Have you?
What? I've had horses. I know you're shocked. I've been hit in the nose too many times to count, and I had to have surgery.
I knew that you had surgery,
Yeah.
but I didn't know that was from. Oh,
yeah, horses.
Well,
Yeah.
shiz.
So that's the only time I've had my nose broken.
Well, heck, no.
Well, okay, I was at a Slipknot show in Hollywood in the early 2000s, and in the mosh pit, and someone was crowd surfing and kicked me in the face. So that might have been my second time that I got a kick to the face.
I mean, I've gotten probably more concussions than most people. And two doesn't really matter. 2 or 3 have happened at concerts. 2 from mosh pits.
Yeah,
but
they don't really do any. Maybe I'm just not going to those shows anymore. But
we're too old.
I know
we don't do that. And if they do have mosh pits, we're not in them.
I stand on the edges. I forget which show it was, but they tried to attempt a mosh pit, and I was just like laughing, like, you guys don't even know what you're doing.
Well, I told you, like, one of my concussions was because I was on the edge of a mosh pit. So I fell into the mosh pit. Somebody kicked me in the head, and my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, picks me up, and he tells me, and I kind of vaguely woke up a little while this was happening. Biggest guy we've ever seen just starts moving his way through the crowd, literally pushing people, screaming, "Move!" over what the band was saying. So that way he could carry me.
He was Moses parting seas.
It was the craziest. I remember vividly, I woke up at one point and I was in front of like the sound mixing booth. And I just saw this giant guy and heard somebody saying, "Move." And then I woke up again and I was sitting against a wall, like on carpet. And the people that were running the venue, they had a clipboard with a signed release waiver thinking in front of me. And they were like, "Are you doing okay?" And I go, "Yeah." And they go, "Are you willing to sign this release form?" I was like, "Yeah." I didn't want to be kicked out. And so I signed this release form, still barely coherent, and the big mofo just runs back into the crowd.
Yeah.
And needless to say, I did not go back onto the main floor. I just stayed behind a wall the rest of that time to make sure I protected my head. But that's one of many concussions I've had.
Yep, between you and soccer and me and horses. We both have our...
But you would think, like, with that many concussions, I still have never been struck, knock on wood,
in the face.
In the face to break my nose. So.
Yeah, you girl soccer players are gnarly too.
Well,
like,
we're mean.
Savage.
Absolutely mean. We're brutal.
And I hate like injuries to the shins and stuff.
Oh, like, yeah, not a problem.
That's like, that reaction is like when I say moist to you. That's like how I feel when people get shin injuries.
Oh yeah, I was playing on a soccer team and one of our girls broke another girl's shin on the middle of the field.
God.
You know, good times.
Gross.
Good times. Also, sorry if our banter is not your cup of tea, and there are many other podcasts, including my other, Vintage Homicide, if you want a little bit more straightforward. But again, we are besties, and we can't help but segue 99% of our lives. So, sorry. But you will get some fun story. Like right now, we're going to jump back in. I have finished my segue from the Wallendas. And we're going to go back to the circus incident that happened July 6th, 1944. So remember how I said we're matinee performance, everything's going good. The Wallendas were ready to take the stage and bad shit went down. We are an explicit podcast. Get over it. There was a very long way to say. We are ready to start performing. And that was when they saw the flames. They were licking the walls of the tent. They signaled for the band to start playing Stars and Stripes, which was a signal to the circus folk that there was an emergency. And the call of fire started to spread as fast as the fire itself. These flames, they went fast, and within 3 minutes, people were running for their lives. The flames had hit the roof, and pieces of the tent were falling down on the spectators. And when I say falling down, keep in mind this is a massively weighted tent, and it's covered with waterproofing materials, and it stays on fire. So it's molten fabric that's falling on these spectators. So they try and flee. But unfortunately, the way that the circus was run in those days, the exit chutes were blocked by the animal cages. So when they had the animals in the circus, they didn't want to have to keep walking the animals further than the tent. So they would set up their cages so that way they would walk down that little aisle and walk immediately into their cage, and then they would back the cage up and park it outside the big top. Well, the animal acts were still going on, so they still had the cages there. So it blocked some of the ports that people could use to exit. And because of this, then people started trying to cut through the fabric of the tent to create their own exits. Now, initially, circus employees tried to douse the flames with buckets of water, but it was not helping. And it took only 10 minutes for the fire to burn through the support poles, the ropes, and the tent dropped on everybody who had not already found their way out. Those who made their way out were not all unharmed, and by the time all was said and done, 168 patrons had died. Bodies were laid out on the drill floor of the State Guard Armory, and the task of identifying the remains was slow. And some of these people were so burned, they had to be identified by dental records, clothing, jewelry, scars, and more. Now, of note, no performers or circus animals were harmed in the fire, and that could be because they knew, like, the back way to get out where none of the patrons did.
Yeah.
And like I said, the animal show was done for the day, so none of the animals were inside the big top. So it was now time to figure out what caused the tragedy. It was the worst circus disaster in the United States to that date, with State Police Commissioner Edward J. Hickey leading the investigation. Some witnesses stated that they saw the fire start near the canvas section of the tent for the men's restroom. But the main question was, how did it start? How did it happen so fast? And that answer was readily available. The 19-ton tent had recently been waterproofed, and that was the problem. The waterproofing was 1,800 pounds of paraffin wax dissolved into 6,000 gallons of gasoline to cover the circus tent. And specifically, that means it was 4 parts for this particular tent. It was 4 parts Texaco white gasoline and 1 part Standard Oil Company yellow paraffin wax. And then they painted it on there. So the other problem was because World War II was happening at this time, they had the reserve on the proper waterproofing material. So because of that, people were coming up with other ways to waterproof the fabrics.
Oh, wow.
And that's when they came up with this mixture, and it really did work. Oh boy, was it hydrophobic, which is why when the circus employees were trying to put it out with water, the beads of water would just literally carry the flames around and not put it out, because it the water traveled so well.
Like off a duck's back.
Exactly. And so this was the huge problem. The other problem is because it was World War II, the circus was understaffed. The men were at war.
Oh, wow.
The fire department was understaffed. The men were at war. So all of this is happening all at the same time. It was just kind of, what's it called? A folly of events or something like that?
A lemony snicket?
Yeah, a series of unfortunate events. You're exactly right. And in addition, though, the one good thing is because this is during the war, almost every city had emergency measures in place for mass disasters. Keep in mind, they're thinking about bombs and things like that. And so they had, like, if this happens, this is how we respond. And so it really took a very short time for people to come and start rendering aid. So, series of unfortunate events with a good smattering of glitter. I don't know what you call it.
They trained for it.
Exactly.
Not knowingly.
Exactly. Yeah. And so this tent was essentially coated in napalm, because napalm is a jellied gasoline formulation from gasoline, naphthalene, and palmitate. And that's what creates that sticky burning solution.
Wow.
So they pretty much just coated this tent in napalm.
And that's like dripping from if the top of the tent's burning, it would be like dripping down on these people.
Exactly. And then it would stick to them because it's paraffin wax.
Awesome.
So the wax would drop, stick to the skin, and continue to burn. And you couldn't put it out because it was hydrophobic. So you couldn't put it out with water.
I'm hydrophobic right now.
Right?
Hard.
So this is the problem, and that's why it created such a mass disaster. And this was enough for authorities to actually bring forth charges to 6 people for involuntary manslaughter and negligence. And that's because of the lack of fire preparation, because That's all the things that they thought that they could prove without a doubt. And so at the time of the performance, the fire extinguishers were buried in a storage unit, so not readily available. The fire trucks were nowhere near the tent. The local fire department was not notified that they were performing at all. And of those arrested, they were James A. Haley, who was the VP of the circus, George W. Smith, the general manager, Leonard Aylesworth, an ad executive, or the boss canvas man, one of the two, or he was both. Edward Versteeg, who was the chief engineer, David Blanchfield, the chief wagon man, so the fire department like wagon man, and William Calley, who was a seat man. I have no idea what that means. It's probably something having to do with the fire brigade. And so all pled no contest. And they went to prison for a year before they were pardoned and released.
Pardoned and released.
Now, the circus itself was charged almost $5 million to pay the families and the victims of the fire.
What is that now?
I don't know. And it was reported as $5 million, but I don't know if the person reporting had already converted it or not. But I would assume with 700 injured, 168 dead, all the families involved, I would assume it was $5 million then money, because that's a lot of people to divide it up between. But you go ahead and conversion, it was 1944. $5 million in 1944 to today's money.
That would be $89,357,954 today.
Lordy. To be divided up by the 6,000 to 8,000 patrons that were there that day. It's generally accepted that the cause of the fire was an accident, but there was a resurgence in the investigation of the cause in 1950 about what really happened. And that's because a man named Robert Dale Segee, or Segee, was arrested for arson fires. Now, while interrogated, he confessed to starting the fire at the circus. He was an employee of the circus at the time of the fire. He said he committed 4 additional murders and set fires in Maine and New Hampshire. Well, they sent him to the state hospital, and that was when he started saying that he set the fires because a Native American on flaming horseback told him to do it. So while he was there, he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, and after he received the treatment and became more, we'll call it sedate, he recanted the entire confession and was never officially charged with the fire because nobody could prove whether or not this was the truth. Now, he died in 1997, and he professed his innocence in causing the fire. So once he received his treatment and became a bit more even keel, he basically said that he lied that whole time. In 1993, there was a reinvestigation into the fire with updated forensic techniques, and again, the results were inconclusive, with the final theory being that the whole event was caused by a stray cigarette or a match. Now, 6 victims of the fire were left unidentified until Little Miss 1565, who she was named that because she was unidentified. She was identified almost 5 decades later and was Eleanor Cook. Now, of note, and this was like the saddest and best visual I had of recounting this whole story. So I'm sorry if this depresses you, but it's a visual that you just have to hear. There was a little girl named Patricia Murphy who, at the age of 6, was to drop a white rose in front of her favorite headstone design of the 6 unidentified remains. And that was in order to choose the one that was to mark Little Miss 1565's grave. And she was chosen because she lost her mother, father, and brother in the circus fire.
Oh, whole family.
The whole family. But she was dressed so cute, and then they just led her around these 6 headstones, and they just said, pick your favorite one, and that was to become the marker for Little Miss 1565. Isn't that like, I loved that, and it made me sad all at the same time.
Yeah.
But you're welcome. If I had to read it, you have to live through it too. Now, for some reason, Eleanor Cook's family never went to claim her body. I don't know why, but she was identified, so there we go. She was finally interred with her biological family in 1991. So they dug her up and moved her back to where the rest of the family was laid to rest. Now, in 2002, the Hartford Circus Fire Memorial Foundation was established, and they erected a memorial to those killed in the fire, which was placed in 2004, and that was at the site where the center ring had been. After this fire, there were more stringent codes put in place to prevent this type of catastrophe from ever happening again. But it did. So if you thought we were done, sorry, I guess I'm just not used to having a short podcast.
You're thorough.
I can't help it. A lot of the times, and you will notice this so many times, I'll be Googling something and then something else will pop up, and then I get put down a rabbit hole. And this is why I can't put my sources down, because I wind up on level 50,000 and I come up with these other stories that have something to do with the initial story that I'm investigating. And so I will be continuing.
Carry on.
On December 17th, 1961, the Gran Circo Norte Americano was 2 days into their stay at Niterói in southeast Brazil. And the only reason I'm saying it like that is because we did have to Google enunciate that one because I can't say it. So this massive circus was owned by Danilo Stevanovic, who was proud to erect his newly purchased nylon blue and white tent that he had just received from India. The tent held 2,500 people, and since we are on Christmas break, it was filled to capacity with families. They were excited to see the matinee show. And keep in mind, it's their summertime. So it's nice and toasty. They're all on break. Let's go see a show.
Lots of bodies in there.
So it was 3:45, and the trapeze artists were in the middle of their performance when one of them saw a fire in the stands. It was on the left side of the exit tunnel. This was Antoinette Astanovich, no relation to Stevanovic. I know, it's fun. She waited until her partner was back on the platform before she shouted fire because she didn't want him to fall. Yeah. So she just kind of she saw the flames and was nervous looking. You done yet? You done yet? Time to hurry.
Chop, chop.
So he gets back on the platform and she shouted fire. And again, within minutes, it was pandemonium. The tent started falling onto the patrons again.
Did it play the Stars and Stripes?
Yeah, I don't know if that was an American thing. That was one of the dumbest things I have said in a long time. You know what? I'm going to leave that in. Just so you guys know, sometimes I am dumb. No, they did not play Stars and Stripes in Brazil. Gosh, I'm dumb. Okay. It was pandemonium. The tent was falling on patrons again. The exits were blocked by people fleeing. There was a report that there was a Boy Scout in the audience that grabbed his little knife and he cut a hole so that way his family could exit.
Nice.
And other people followed. And within 20 minutes, the whole thing was destroyed. The whole tent. Not the whole thing. Get it? Dad humor. Because he cut a hole.
No, I don't get it.
So the fire department was actually nearby and they were there quickly, but it was not quick enough because some that had not burned were killed by trampling. The people that had escaped were pulling people from the wreckage and driving them to the hospitals themselves because there was not enough room in the emergency vehicles for everyone. The Argentinian Minister of Health called in the director of Municipal Institute of Burns and Plastic Surgery in Buenos Aires, Fortuno Beniam, to get a team of 15 together to go to Brazil and aid the victims of the fire. So plastic surgeons, doctors, nurses, they were we're there. The United States sent plasma and blood in collaboration with the Red Cross to aid these victims. The dead were taken to the Chow Martins Sports Stadium, and as soon as someone was identified, they would be moved into a coffin for burial. The governor put out a call to all carpenters and joiners in the city to aid in making the number of coffins that were needed. So they would literally be making coffins. Somebody would be like, this is my son. They would move the body into the just made coffin and take it away. And the governor had well-behaved prisoners out and helping to dig the graves that these coffins were to go into.
Trustees. Trustees.
Is that what?
That's what we have in America. They're called trustees.
Okay.
I think.
Then yeah. So basically, it's good enough. Let's get you out there.
Free help.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And so they did that. And then he also erected an official 3-day mourning period. So during 3 days after the fire, that's when everybody came, built the coffins, identified their people, got them buried, had the graves, and then the city opened back up again. Now, it was time for another investigation, and this one showed that fancy new 6-ton tent that was imported was not made from nylon, but it was made of cotton, covered in paraffin wax.
Again.
So we now know this is the true problem. And it is reported, in some places they thought, oh, it's the electrical that was subpar. There was no fire extinguishers, and the circus had been erected onto dry grass. None of that was really a contributing factor. It was, but no. It was the tent. There were many false witness testimonies until a 21-year-old former employee of the circus named Adelson Marcelino Alves, who was also known as Daquina. He was accused by another employee, Maciel Felizardo, and that was because he had been reprimanded numerous times and fired when he said that he would set fire to the circus. So that'll do it. In addition, he was seen in the area when the fire happened and was gone when the fire reached the inferno. After, he confessed to setting the fire because he was in an argument with the doorman that day. They took him to the site for a reenactment, and during this he said he had help from a man named Walter Rosa de Santos, who was also known as Bigoti, who was 31, and he said that he had actually thrown gas onto the tent before he set the fire by throwing a match against the tent. Bigoti was then arrested. He denied all claims, stating that he had an alibi and was not even at the circus. But when confronted with a man who said that he sold Bigoti the gas, he eventually confessed to his participation. But not everybody was on board believing these confessions. Now, the electrical causing fire was ruled out because the electrical panel was fine after the fire. Electrical panel causes the fire, obviously it's going to be on fire. In this case, it wasn't. The doorman confirmed that he had a disagreement with Daquina. His mother backed up the possibility that it was him by stating he had been crazy since childhood.
Oh.
Yeah. And he had previously spent time in a sanatorium after a mental health examination. Dr. Newton Guerra said that he was an epileptic with a low mental level. Those are in quotes. I ain't saying that today. He was known to have learning difficulties and was expelled from school at 9. He ran away from boarding school at 12. In addition to him and Walter, they also pointed the finger at Jose dos Santos, who was known as Pedral, and he was the lookout. Now, because of all the investigation and the trial, Daquina was sentenced to 16 years in prison with 6 years to be served at the psychiatric hospital. How they said this, it was weird. That was his sentence. So whether or not he was better, he was spending 6 years at the psychiatric hospital, 10 years in prison. I don't get how that is, but it is what it is. Bigoti was sentenced to 16 years in prison, and Pedral was sentenced to 14 years, with a portion to be served at an agricultural colony, which...
Slave.
Pretty much. And the crazy thing is that these two massive events are not standalones. There's another circus fire that happened in India in 1981, and there was something like 70 people that died at that. 2 were arrested for negligence. And so even with all the prevention measures in place, that doesn't mean that they're being followed or that it is preventing this from happening again. So there was some before, there was some after, but I figured 2 cases is enough for the depression of the episode. But the rule of thumb, don't coat fabric in paraffin wax and gasoline to make your own waterproof material.
No.
I don't think that's too much to ask for.
And follow the fire codes you have in place nowadays?
Yes, that's a really good suggestion.
And don't use animals in the circus.
I love that idea. All right, hopefully you enjoyed our first episode, and like I said, this will be a learning experience. If the sound is not up to par through your own individual headphones or anything, drop us a line. We'll keep working on it. But get ready for more. We'll bring some more tales like this to you. Bye.
The views and thoughts expressed in this podcast are ours alone and do not represent the thoughts or opinions of anyone else. The information presented is for general information purposes only. We are not liable for anything you do with this information.